Hello, all you ghosts and goblins out there. I'm Andrew,
I'm Ashton.
And I'm Sean.
and we are the Night Scholars, exploring the mystifying world of cryptids, ghosts, ghouls, and all things supernatural. Today, we are talking about everyone's favorite.
Yeah, sorry guys. My cats are like fighting outside. Like, let me go check and see what's happening. I'm sorry.
No,
What are you guys
okay.
doing out here?
Sorry about that, guys. The cats have been acting real weird lately. Are we ready to start again?
Yeah. Ooh, sorry, I'm a little tired today. Where were we?
Intro.
Okay. Hello, all you ghosts and goblins out there. I'm Andrew.
I'm Ashton.
And I'm Sean.
We are the Night Scholars, exploring the mystifying world of cryptids, ghosts, ghouls, and all things supernatural. Today we'll be talking about everyone's favorite fetching scapegoats, the Doppelgangers. So tell me, what do you guys know about Doppelgangers? What's your experience with them?
So I've been just doing a little bit of research, kind of going into the backstory and kind of finding out the origins of doppelgangers. And I mean, stories like this go back centuries as far as people that are being replaced and like having their spots taken. But I mean, there's also stories of, good things with the doppelgangers as well. I mean, I really don't think that we should overlook the positive things that they've done. I mean,
Yeah, sometimes they're great for advice, bouncing something off yourself.
Talking to yourself a little much today?
No more than usual.
Yeah, I feel that. No, it's not untrue that there has been a bit of, like, there's a bit of history with the doppelganger, the idea going back. We have records, at least we're not sure, but there are theories that even as far back as before written history, the belief that a child was a little different. Maybe he wasn't really your child. Maybe he was someone else, someone who was looking like them, behaved a little different. And I mean, that could be relatively useful. Sometimes it might just be, oh, hey, they're just friendly. Maybe they're even a little better.
I know
Wanna
I
t-
found one particular story from German author Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, where he has several stories where he recalls seeing doppelgangers. One specific one, he was leaving this town on horseback, and he looks up and he sees this man standing there in a gold trimmed suit. And in the blink of an eye, the man disappears. And then several years later, he's on his way back to that same town. And as he passes that same spot, he looks down and realizing that he's wearing the same gold trimmed suit that the man that he had seen all those years ago had been wearing. So maybe doppelgangers are just visions of the future, what's to come.
Bit of time hopping there?
Be cool if they could all time travel.
Eh. But if we can time travel and then go back in time, what happens when the doppelganger goes back in time to before the original? And then the doppelganger becomes the original, and the original becomes the doppelganger, at which point the doppelganger original gains the time hopping powers and goes back in time to before to become the original.
It's a closed circuit. It's just an endless loop that keeps going. Perpetual motion.
And there's a real danger in that because who's to say we're the real originals?
I mean, I think we would know if we'd been replaced. That's just ridiculous.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't make jokes like that.
So, what are your favorite kinds of doppelgangers in history?
I think my favorite comes from the German film The Miracle, where the
Ooh.
Virgin Mary takes the place of a nun.
What does she do?
She basically like lives in the convent for the nun, while the nun goes out and has like love and adventures and then comes back and becomes herself again.
Fascinating. Able to live another life. Sometimes the
Yeah,
ability to be
exactly.
replaced and experience something that you wouldn't be able to do in your droll, mundane life.
Exactly.
How about you, Sean? What's a particular example you really love of doppelgangers?
So I think kind of going back a little bit, I tend to kind of lean more towards the folklore side of things,
Mhm.
and there's quite a bit going back. I mean, even in our intro, we made a reference to it, them being called fetches, but I any real culture that you go back and you can find examples of doppelgangers or changelings, shapeshifters, anything kind of along that lines. And I think kind of as we've gotten toward more modern, we tend to have a lot of lines kind of blurred as far as where the term doppelganger originates from. But I think my personal favorite is if we're talking about, you know, any kind of loose terminology, definitely the Fae taking children and replacing them with doppelgangers.
Yes. Them Fae, always up to no good. But, sometimes the Fae are just... Are they really bad, or are they just... Maybe it's what's best for the family. Maybe the original child just wasn't quite up to snuff, and the new one... I mean, they have their advantages. The doppelganger has a bit of that Fae mystic, maybe a bit of power from another world that can benefit the family in some way. Not all doppelgangers are necessarily harmful. I mean, there are some who damage or the reputation of doppelgangers and make them look out to be like mischievous or devilish, but we all know there's benevolent ones who are able to provide good things to the families that raise them, blessing them with making sure the cows produce milk on time or that the attic stays clean. Given how my attic looks, I'd love a doppelganger to fix it up.
Sometimes they even chase away the British.
I love when my doppelganger chases away the British.
It's the greatest use for one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. We could all use a little bit less of the British Empire in our lives.
Absolutely.
I think personally, one of my favorite examples of the doppelganger goes into a bit of like Muslim ideology, where the doppelgangers indeed have been known to be, they could be benevolent or harmful. But it entirely depends on the creature. They're not an inherently good or evil creature. They're just a person who technically can make their own decisions. And those decisions happen to involve taking the form of someone else. I apologize, I mispronounced this, the Karin or Quarin, very popular, especially in a lot of Arabic communities. The person who just kind of comes in, or maybe resides in your heart the entire time and just takes on your form when you give in to a more base impulse.
Oh, isn't that the one that's popular in Egypt?
Yes.
Oh, I love that one. Fascinating. They can have kids. Didn't know that about that particular type of doppelganger till recently.
It is very interesting how, depending on the mythos, they can or cannot have children.
Hmm.
And sometimes they go on to produce children that may be doppelgangers, that may be the originals. And then what happens when the child of a doppelganger is swapped out with another one? Is that now the original, or was that the doppelganger? Maybe that was the original child that the original was meant to have.
Turns
Everyone
around
and
about.
everything and everyone is a doppelganger. There's no way to prove otherwise.
I mean, if we go into alternate universe theorem, it'd be very, very hypocritical to assume that we are the primary universe and we're not the alternate one. So, to a certain degree, yes, everyone could just be a replica of the original.
All the same, down to the genetic structure, there's got to be differences.
And might be at a spiritual level, they might say. The soul, do they have them or do they not? Depending, there's a lot of debate. Do doppelgangers even have souls, or are they just simply empty husks wandering around? Maybe that's why they take the place of someone else so that they can experience a life they might not otherwise be able to have.
So if a doppelganger doesn't have a soul, would a ginger doppelganger have a soul since ginger humans don't have souls?
Most
The
likely.
double negative, it cancels out.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Which is why we all know that's the reason why gingers are dying out, is they're being replaced or going on to become doppelgangers.
Oh, that's a
Nothing to do with
fascinating
genetics,
theory.
clearly.
Absolutely not. Never. Nothing to do
So,
with similar genetic structures.
so we all know that modern doppelgangers, there's a lot of experience with them. I think Dungeons and Dragons is probably most people's experience with the idea of the doppelganger in a lot of pop culture, although it shows up from time to time in other fantasy works. Surprisingly, I don't think there was really an example of one in Tolkien that I can think of, at least not in the majority of his writings. Maybe there was one in the Unfinished Tales that I never finished. But they
I
definitely
think it's
show up.
Silmarillion.
I don't think so. At best, we had other, like we had the Maya. Sauron at least one time went and impersonated other people, but that was more of having the power of a doppelganger, but clearly not being a true doppelganger. Just a typical demon, I guess. Although I guess depending on the mythos, demons and doppelgangers could basically be the same thing. As a lot of the early mythos evolved and was a little bit co-opted into more traditional Christianity into the Middle Ages, the idea that doppelganger was simply not so much a fae as much as a demonic creature. Maybe your child was replaced by a demon. Scary stuff.
Very scary stuff. Lots of guilt too, though. Like, maybe you were given a doppelganger child because you didn't please God or you're a bad person, and so this is your punishment.
Mm-hmm. And Satan just taken them child away to be raised far, far away where you'll never see them again. So you better be good. Satan's always watching.
Always.
It's really
Watching.
funny how much power they assign to him.
Yeah.
But
He's a
that
busy
also,
guy,
indeed, it kind of just speaks to the kind of mysticism or the fear of the unknown that's really prevalent through a lot of these myths. You don't really understand what's going on, so you just assign to it a supernatural motive. After all, we know that doppelgangers don't really exist.
Absolutely not.
So what we can safely say for sure is that there was something else going on. For example, I've heard, especially for some of the earliest examples of doppelganger, some think that may have been early signs of some sort of mental situation, some kind of item such as autism or early schizophrenia. A child who seems to look away, doesn't have interest in socializing with the other kids, but seems oddly really bright at picking up more elementary or mathematical tasks. I mean, it's impossible to diagnose, especially something going back several thousand years, but those are very similar signs to what we experience in young children who are experiencing early signs of being on the autistic spectrum. Just that fear of the unknown and trying to find a supernatural explanation because they don't have another alternative to use.
Yeah, the more we learn about the world, the more we realize that magic is just a form of science. We just haven't discovered it yet. Like, sometimes people can see their doppelgangers, but it's just they're having a schizophrenic episode or an epileptic fit.
Or just high.
Or just
Never
high.
underestimate the power of being on drugs. Or wandering through the desert, just lost and a little bit short of water. You don't realize you need it necessarily, so you look forward and you just see someone who you know has been dead for years, and then one more chance again. Is it them? Is it their ghost? Is it the doppelganger?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you just really need a good drink?
Are they bringing you closer to the oasis, or are you going to be swallowing mouthfuls of sand? You never know.
Anything else you've learned that's really interesting?
I was looking about people who got arrested for crimes, but they claim their doppelganger did it. And sometimes that's true. Like there was a guy who spent 17 years behind bars. He persistently denied any involvement with the crime of which he was accused, and he was released when they found someone who had looked strikingly similar and had the same first name.
Hate when that happens.
Right? It's the worst. They actually found that people who are true lookalikes sometimes share a lot of genes with the people that they look like.
Mm-hmm. And not just twins either. It can happen. I mean, to be fair, probably a lot of that comes down to the fact that a lot of the human genome code is shared between all of humanity, and we mostly focus on the 1% that differs to differentiate humanity. But it is surprising just how much in common some people can have that seemingly have no other connection.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, there's it's what an old saying that there's 7 people in the world that look exactly like you. So who's to say that a doppelganger isn't just one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, with how loose the term is, like, what does doppelganger even really mean anymore? Just somebody
Mm-hmm.
that's similar enough to you?
An
Someone that
imitation,
looks,
maybe?
someone who looks similar, acts similar, thinks similar, believes similar.
Sounds similar.
Maybe they don't even realize they're the doppelganger. Maybe they
Yeah,
think they're
who's
the
to know?
original.
It's quite possible.
And at the end of the day, how would you even really know?
Yeah, once again, we're compelled to ask, how does the original know they're the original? How would the doppelganger know? Are we all
Yeah.
doppelgangers? Are we all original?
Or are we all just part of the exact same genetic pool going back as far as humanity has existed?
Much to think about.
Yeah.
Right, I gotta say, Andrew, I'm a little impressed. You really dove deep into this particular episode today.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes you just get in the mood, you know? It's just something really just grabs you, like you have just personal interest in it. Just really relatable, you know?
Yeah, yeah, no, I
Who of us
get it, I
hasn't
get
felt
it.
like an imposter in the world?
Yeah, I mean, just imposter syndrome it's so common nowadays.
Hmm.
Like in every aspect of life, doesn't matter if you're streaming, you're recording, you're working. Like regardless of what you do, like do you ever really feel like you quite belong?
Oh yeah, all the time. When I go into work and look around my coworkers, and I'm just like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, you walk through your house, you look at your pets, look at your partner. You're like, where did you come from? Who are you? Your cat's a shapeshifter?
I mean, that's more realistic. I mean, how many cats are there in the world? It'd be so easy to just replace one.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like an actual shapeshifter. Like your cat's a person that is evading taxes by being a cat.
Well, we all
Oh.
we all know your cat's a skinwalker, anyways, so we know
Oh yeah.
they've been replaced.
Or did they violate the rules of magic and are cursed into the form of a cat for 100 years? I guess that's the line between a shapeshifter and a doppelganger, isn't it? A person who pretends to be a human versus a person who can turn into any form they want.
I mean, I guess.
But that might be a different episode, I'll be honest.
Most likely, most likely. I know if I had a choice, I would definitely choose to be a tax avoiding cat.
Wouldn't we all?
Hmm.
But how about a tax avoiding doppelganger? Maybe that's why you've chased someone else's life. You're like, okay, my life has gone down the drain. I just can't do this anymore. What if I just am someone else now?
I'm just trying to
Huh.
avoid jury duty.
Aren't we all?
I
Aren't
feel like
we
there's
all?
easier ways to do that, though, that we can't talk about on this podcast.
You can always fake your death.
Yeah, it seems a little extreme.
To you, perhaps.
Yes, it is. I'm the crazy one because I look around and I'm like, jury duty. I'd rather be dead.
I think you're in the minority there. I think most people would fake their own death to get out of jury duty.
You mean you
I
don't
know
want
I
to go
would.
into a room of people and answer a bunch of questions about are you a good American citizen or not, so that you can go sit on a panel of 1,100 people to listen to traffic duty number 37?
To be fair, I would fake my death at the slightest inconvenience. Really, like
I'd fake my death to get out of an awkward conversation.
And I mean, to be fair, if you're really a doppelganger, how hard would it really be to fake your own death? You're probably used to it. You go swap into another life just like that.
Yeah, practiced easy. Simple like that.
Maybe isn't that what they are? Is doppelgangers just people trying to avoid responsibility in life by taking on someone else's?
every doppelganger is evading taxes and is wanted by the IRS. This is my new theory, and I will die on this hill.
But, that gets us to one of the biggest advantages of the doppelganger, is that they're the best damn scapegoat you could ask for. It was just my doppelganger. They were faking it. The doppelganger lets you live out your best life. And then when things go wrong, you're just like, yep, that wasn't me. That was that person. That person who looks totally like me and acts totally like me and looks totally like me, but doesn't have a soul.
It's like when a supervillain clones themselves so they can get up to more mischief.
But are doppelgangers supervillains? Or are they just people living their best life and dodging taxes?
I
I
mean,
know there was a lot of talk of doppelgangers, especially nowadays, just being a term for an evil twin. But
Mm-hmm.
who's to say they're the evil one? Like,
yeah, how do we know the original isn't the evil one?
And the doppelganger's
And the
the good one.
replacement's the better one.
Trying to make their life better. After all, if the child was really that much of a problem, maybe it's a good thing that the Fae replaced them.
Yeah, we've all watched the cinematic classic, The Man in the Iron Mask.
on the
Yeah.
on the topic of scapegoating, though, I do think doppelgangers do tend to get a bad rap. Like, there's a lot of legends, there's a lot of myths going back. The one that really comes to mind for me is the Philae of the out of Norse mythology, which was a spirit that was just an exact copy of you, that they were just intertwined with you, and often viewed as a guardian spirit, and the only time that you would see them is in the final hours of your life as sort of a harbinger, but also as a comfort so that you wouldn't be alone in that moment. So, are doppelgangers really as bad as they seem? Or are they just getting a bad rap? Is it just really people trying to dodge their own responsibilities?
I mean, what do they do for the most part? They just walk around and exist, and people are like, "Oh, they're evil. Look at them being evil, walking evilly."
I exist. Am I evil? That's totally not a gross oversimplification, definitely.
Absolutely not. We would never do such hot takes.
So I think that brings us to a lot. We've talked a lot today. I mean, there's a lot more we could say. There's so much to doppelgangers. They're such fascinating creatures. But I think we should wrap things up with everyone's favorite question. Sean, do you believe in doppelgangers?
I think they exist. I think there's something out there. Like obviously, I don't know if they're necessarily what we've discussed here today, but there's obviously people that look similar enough that, like Ashton was saying earlier with the man that had spent time in prison, like there's doppelgangers out there. They're not supernatural though. That's just absurd.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Ashton?
I'm gonna have to go with no. I just don't think they're real at all.
Yeah, no offense, Sean, but I think I kind of agree with Ashton here. The idea that someone just can walk into your conversation and just take over the middle or in the middle of your just up in your life like that, it just doesn't seem that realistic to me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't think that would ever happen.
Like, you're just sitting there and you call the door, and someone else just walks in and takes the. There's no way.
Yeah,
You're
that
right.
would never happen.
You're right. I'm being ridiculous.
Thank you all for listening to the Night Scholars. All of you be good to each other. Don't answer the scratching at the window.
Or do.
But most importantly, stay safe out there.
If you can.